Market Development Cooperator Program seed money, if you will, to support the auto aftermarket. And it's been a fabulous partnership. We support them not only, if you want to advance the slide, Carolina, and I'll talk through the agenda for today. We've got a jam-packed 35 minutes of content. So this will give you an idea of the flow of the program. I mentioned I'm Kelly Holloway. I'm part of the Global Automotive team. And we have staff all around the United States and overseas and embassies and consulates as well. But today in this 35 packed minutes, we're going to talk to you a bit about our partnership. We're going to talk to you about the Colombia market, sort of the commercial dynamics there and the opportunities that our team on the ground sees for U.S. exporters. You'll be hearing from Jeff Geiger, who's the commercial attaché there, and Norcia Ward-Marin, who is the specialist in the automotive industry, with some great tips on how you can expand in that particular market. And then Carolina Aragoses with Auto Care Association will wrap up with one particular vehicle that you might use, do you get the pun there, vehicle you might use to expand into the market. So on the next slide, it shows the Commercial Service Organization, again, part of the Department of Commerce and International Trade Administration. And our network is not only through the staff you're going to hear from today, but also all around the country. We have some 108 offices that help you locally tap into the resources that the federal government offers in support of your trade. So if you're not working with your local U.S. Commercial Service office, I would encourage you to do so. Our contact information will be provided in this presentation. Just reach out and we'll make sure you're put in touch if you're not already talking to them. And the bottom line is we work for you to help you sell more. So I mentioned a great partnership with the Auto Care Association through our Market Development Cooperator Program, and they have a fabulous 3-year agenda to further your interest in Latin America. Today we're going to talk about Colombia, and to do that welcome and to tell you more about what they are doing and how they're doing it, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Barrett, who's the Vice President for the Auto Care Association.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all the participants for joining us today. For those of you who are not familiar with the Auto Care Association, we're a trade association based just outside of Washington, D.C. in Bethesda, Maryland. We protect and advance the interest of businesses providing aftermarket products and services for all classes of motor vehicles. The association has nearly 3,000 member companies, and that represents about 150,000 independent automotive aftermarket businesses. The association provides a wide range of programs and services, from advocacy through our government affairs team. We have education through events and webinars, the technology standards to manage and exchange automotive catalog data. We have valuable market intelligence information on all areas within the auto care industry, and we provide communication resources. One thing that we're also doing is offering international programs. So one area that we're becoming increasingly active is international business development. We want to help our members identify business opportunities in new international partners and customers. So last year, as Kelly mentioned, we received an Export Promotion Award from the Department of Commerce to help increase U.S. exports of automotive parts and services. In 2016, we organized 2 successful trade missions. One was to Guatemala and one to Peru. Many of our participating companies have already reported sales, and they are also very optimistic in developing business relationships with the leads that they got while participating in these missions. Later, we'll share some testimonials from those companies. There are really 2 main reasons we are developing our international initiatives. First, it's a competitive global marketplace, and our members and companies in the auto care industry are looking for opportunities to develop their global supply chains. And second, exporting makes good business sense. The more markets you export to, the more sales you can make. This slide highlights a few of the reasons why your business should focus on Latin America. We surveyed our general membership and saw Latin America as a target market with great growth opportunities. More than half of all the U.S. free trade agreement partners are in Latin America. More than 40% of U.S. exports already go to Latin America. That means there's a great success record for U.S. companies in the region. the Latin American marketplace is getting more sophisticated and becoming similar to the United States. In addition, a high level of used car sales and used American vehicle imports are happening in Latin America. Add that to the fact that they have an aging vehicle population, and that's the perfect combination for aftermarket sales. So, and they, as they say, it's all about location. The proximity of the United States provides significantly shorter lead times, giving us a competitive advantage over Asia and our European competitors. And lastly, Latin America has a history of being highly receptive to U.S. goods and services. They're familiar with our U.S. brands, and we have a hugely high reputation for being the best quality out there. So that works to our advantage. So the U.S. has signed free trade agreements with many Latin American countries, making them excellent targets for export growth for many reasons. Most auto parts are currently entering these markets tariff-free. FTAs break down trade and regulatory barriers that companies may face when doing business in new markets. Protections for investments and intellectual property rights are strengthened through free trade agreements. And then you get to customs, they're harmonized. You really make it so much easier to do business there because the burden of high amounts of paperwork and procedures, it's taken away because of the free trade agreements. And lastly, free trade agreements establish a procedure for resolving disputes when doing business in a country with a different legal system. So that's it for that area. But now I'd like to have you learn a little bit more about Colombia. And so we're going to hear from Jeff Geiger. He's the commercial attaché for the U.S. Embassy in Bogota.
Thank you, Michael. Just going to give a brief overview of Colombia, and then my colleague Norcia is going to provide an overview of Colombia's automotive market. Colombia has a sizable population. It's almost 50 million. It's got therefore a sizable domestic market. They're right behind Brazil and Mexico in terms of population. You'll often hear Colombia referred to as a country of regions. And this is due to many reasons, but primarily because the major urban areas are separated by both mountains and a poor road network. So, for example, when you're traveling from Bogota to Medellin, as you can see on the map there, it's not very far, and it wouldn't be far to drive, but it would be impractical to drive. So you fly to between most cities in Colombia. It's got a central location in the Americas, which for U.S. businesses means that it's very cost-effective in terms of market visits and traveling here to meet with distributors or to look for business partners. There are nonstop flights from LA, it's about 7.5 hours, and from DC on the other coast, it's about 5 hours. The country is served by two major ports, Cartagena, Buenaventura, and lastly, the country has an educated populace. Next slide, please. So the United States enjoys a special relationship with Colombia. We have a strong commercial relationship. Colombia is a large trading partner of the United States. The United States is Colombia's largest export market. Trade has dipped in the past couple of years. That's mainly been due to low global oil prices. Oil is one of Colombia's major exports and a significant source of revenue for the government. We also have a strong political alliance with Colombia, and this is really unique in the Western Hemisphere. If anyone has spent a lot of time in Latin America, which I have, Colombia is definitely different. You have a much friendlier atmosphere here, and that's both in terms of political and social relationships. We have a very close relationship with Colombia. We've had the free trade agreement in effect since 2012, which has eliminated most of the import tariffs on U.S. exports in automotive parts and accessories. Colombia is one of Latin America's largest economies behind Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. GDP growth for 2016 is just under 2%, has been the central bank and most estimates. And recent performance has been better than most countries in Latin America, especially over the past 2 to 3 years. The recent slowdown has been due to El Nino weather and a drought. There was a trucker strike recently that was about 45 days, and that meant shortages in certain food staples, especially potatoes, and again, low oil prices. Infrastructure projects, there are several major infrastructure projects underway, most notably the 4G project, which is a public-private partnership to develop a highway toll system nationwide. And again, going back to to Colombia being a country of regions, again, that's partly due to the poor highway system, so this is meant to alleviate that issue. I think probably most notable, though, is the improvement in security. The best way to put it is that this is not your father's Colombia. The Colombia that most of us know from programs like Narcos and things like that, and the news that we saw back in the 90s is not the Colombia that we see today. There have been significant urban transformations. This is especially true in cities like Medellin, which is where Pablo Escobar is from. Crime rates are down. The threats in today's Colombia are not political anymore, such as kidnappings and those things, but it's really more things like street crime and things that are common in most major cities. I've lived in places in the United States like Richmond, Virginia, and I can tell you I feel safer here in Bogota than I did in Richmond, Virginia. So things have changed dramatically in Colombia over the past 15 years in terms of security. The demographics, it's a relatively young population. It's a growing middle class. This is especially true in the urban areas, and what this means is it's a large consumer class. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges that face Colombia, as most of you are aware, the government signed a peace agreement. They negotiated a peace agreement with the armed group, the FARC. This was known as Paz Colombia or Peace Colombia. And this was a historic achievement by the Santos government. And you probably read in The Economist that it earned Colombia the Country of the Year in 2016 for this historic agreement that was reached that ended over 5 decades of civil war. The peace dividend that everyone talks about, which is basically just going to be an increase or a bump in the country's economic growth, its GDP, we're really expecting this to be a long-term benefit, something that we won't be seeing in the short term, but that will accrue over the long term to the country, that will help increase the country's economic growth. One of the big challenges is what to do with the 7,000 demobilized combatants, the former combatants of the FARC. So this is one of the major challenges that's facing both the government and really the private sector. The private sector is trying to get involved with the reintegration of former combatants through training programs, education. So this is both a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for U.S. companies that can offer training to the Colombian labor force. Organized crime remains an issue. This is especially true in sectors like mining. There's still significant coca production going on in Colombia. And there's a dichotomy between the cities and the country, and this is one of the priorities of the Colombian government at this point is rural development, because this is where all these former combatants were. And many of these areas did not have a government presence, so the government is now trying to develop the rural areas and actually have a presence there. Corruption is still an issue. Transparency with things like government contracts and procurement, and bureaucracy and red tape. The good news is that the government is making a lot of headway on this and is working with a lot of U.S. government organizations to improve their procurement process and make that more transparent. Logistics, as I pointed out, is an issue. But again, hopefully projects like the 4G infrastructure project will help to alleviate some of the challenges associated with poor infrastructure. The high transportation costs are a direct result of poor infrastructure. This means that the supply chains are expensive, and moving goods from the ports inland and inland to the ports is expensive. Again, hopefully the 4G projects are going to help overcome some of these challenges. Oil, as I pointed out, as the low global oil prices have negatively impacted government revenues. It's projected that Colombia has about 5 years of reserves left onshore, which is where most of Colombia's oil comes from. Offshore development is now the priority of the government, and they are looking to develop offshore within the next decade, which is a very ambitious goal. There's still some compliance issues we have with the free trade agreement. That's one of the things that keeps us busy here at the embassy. Fortunately, there are not a lot of issues that we have with auto parts and the automotive sector in general. It's more ethanol, pharmaceuticals, liquors, things like that. And there's still quite a large informal economy, and tax evasion remains an issue. So with that broad overview, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Norcia to talk a little bit more about the automotive market in Colombia.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Good afternoon to everyone. Colombia is a major player in the production of vehicles in the region. 253,000 vehicles were sold in 2016. However, sales dropped 10.6% in comparison with 2015. This was mainly caused because the drop in the global price of the oil. In 2016, the new vehicle sales were dominated by U.S. with the brand Chevrolet. Chevrolet has been the top-selling brand for the past 30 years in Colombia, and they have, in 2016, they had the 24% of the market share. In the chart, you can see the top 10 brands by sales in 2016. It is followed by Renault, that has the 20% of market share, Kia, 10%. Those are the three top brands, and then you can also see the others brands. Next slide, please. The size of the fleet on the road is 11.9 million vehicles, including motorcycles. Studies have demonstrated that the country has additional access to 3.5 million vehicles due to Colombia FTA. The automotive sector contributes 4% of the country's GDP in 2015 and employs about 22,000 people. There is an average of 1 car for every 10 people in Colombia, excluding buses, motorcycles, and trucks. Next slide, please. In the following chart, you can see the size of the fleet by vehicle category. Colombia has more than 6 million motorcycles that represent 56% of the fleet, followed by the automobiles, has 26%, which is more than 3 million vehicles, trucks 2%, buses 1%, heavy-duty trucks 0.5% of the fleet, dump trucks 0.4% of the fleet, and the other vehicles represent the 15% of the fleet. Colombia. Next slide, please. In terms of production, Colombia automobile manufacturing in South America after Brazil and Argentina. 37% of the vehicles are locally produced and 63% are imported vehicles. More than 50 brands and 700 models are in the market. And more than 106 countries compete in Colombia's auto parts market. Companies like General Motors, Renault, Daimler, and Hino operate assembly plants primarily for the domestic market. There are 8 assembly plants in the country. Mazda assembly plant closed in April of 2014. This was mainly because sales of vehicles dropped with Ecuador and Venezuela. Next slide. Colombia's total auto parts imports in 2015 were 3.6 billion. 21%, equivalent to 772 million, are from the U.S. China, the U.S., Japan, Brazil, South Korea, and Mexico have the highest market shares. The U.S. offers high-quality products, and Asian countries have large market share and a low price strategy. So it is very important to know that Colombia is a very price-driven market. Colombia auto parts sales in 2016 were 3.9 million. Also, Colombia also has manufacturing locally of auto parts. Some of the auto parts that they manufacture are air conditioning, seats, exterior bumpers, clutches, among other products. Colombia does not allow the import of used vehicles or motorcycles. It is banned by the Andean Automotive Policy. Imports of used auto parts are also banned. With the implementation of the FTA with the U.S., Colombia is accepting remanufactured auto parts. But the country is currently formulating policies to allow the import of remanufactured products to meet commandments under FTA with the United States. Next slide, please. Among the opportunities that the market offers are the age of the fleet. Freight and passenger vehicles have an average age of 16.9 and 16.7 years. This creates a frequent need to replace broken parts. And as Jeff previously mentioned, the road infrastructure is improving, but many roads nationwide are in poor condition, increasing the likelihood of damaged vehicles and requiring constant vehicle safety checks and replacement parts. Also, under the 2012 U.S. Colombia FTA, most auto parts currently enter the market tariff-free, and the other auto parts will be reduced to zero over the next 2 to 6 years. Next slide. In the following slide, we listed the main auto parts best practices for the market, and some of the most important are radiators, suspension system, brake parts, lights, decorative lights, tires and rims, performance products like suspension, brakes, among others. Next slide, please. It is also important to mention that Colombia is the second largest motorcycle producer in the region after Brazil. In 2016, 567,000 motorcycles were sold. The sales of motorcycles also decreases in 14.2% in comparison with 2015, and it was mainly because of the drop of the price of the oil affected the automotive industry in the country. The leaders in sales are Auteco, Yamaha, Akate, Fanalca, that assembled the Honda motorcycles, Suzuki, and Hero Motors. These 6 companies have assembly plants in Colombia. Thank you very much. I'm going now to turn over back to Jeff.
Thank you, Narcia. Some market entry tips. First and foremost, does your product qualify for the free trade agreement? So as Kelly mentioned, the Commercial Service has a network of about 100 offices located throughout the United States. And with a lot of these issues like qualification for the free trade agreement, identifying your harmonized system code, our offices domestically can help you with all of these things. So I encourage you to work with our domestic office, and you can locate the domestic office at www.export.gov if you're not already working with our domestic office, and find the office nearest to you. And the harmonized system code is very important once you start exporting. That's just a numeric code that Customs uses to identify goods entering and leaving the country. So that will become very important to know your harmonized system code for whatever product will allow you to determine tariffs, if there are any tariffs, in the export market. Next slide, please. With financing, it's important to know that, to remember that in Colombia interest rates are higher than you would find in the United States, which means that borrowing costs are also higher. And credit is not as accessible as in the United States. So expect to negotiate on payment terms. Generally in Colombia, business works in payments in advance using a letter of credit. And again, this will depend on the length of the contract, the amount of the contract, and the specific distributor or representative that you're using in country. Another useful tool to use when exporting is export credit insurance, which basically protects you against non-payment by your international buyer. And these types of financial products are available both through private banks as well as through the EXIM Bank, the Export-Import Bank. And you can find out more about that at their website, exim.gov. Next slide, please. So the following bullet points basically give an overview of the due diligence that you should be doing when entering any international market, but especially in Colombia. A good place to start is with our country commercial guide. That's a publication that we do in-house at each embassy where we have a presence. And this will give you a very, very both broad overview of doing business in Colombia, as well as answer very specific questions you would have about payment terms, Incoterms, financing, leading sectors in the economy, etc. They call it the Clinton list here, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control, which is part of the United States Treasury Department, is a good place to cross-reference any potential partner you may be looking at in Colombia. It's always a good idea to have a lawyer to get legal advice with local laws, regulations, as well as securing your local partner in country, whether that be an agent or representative distributor. We have services that can help you with that. We have one called the International Company Profile, which will give you a summary of a potential partner you're looking at here in Colombia. It'll have some basic financials. It'll have information about the principals, company background, how long they've been in business, etc. We can also do what's called a gold key service, where we can arrange for a day of meetings with potential partners here in country. And as well, obviously, if you have anyone on your staff who speaks Spanish, that would be very useful in Colombia. Colombia has generally good English skills, but Spanish is definitely still very, very useful here. And next slide, please. This is contact information for both me and my colleague Norcia, who covers the automotive sector here at the embassy. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to Carolina to talk more about the upcoming trade mission to Colombia.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeff, for the introduction, and good afternoon to everyone. So I am Carolina Regoces with the International Affairs Office at the Auto Care Association. Now that we have discussed the automotive market in Colombia, you're probably wondering how to start taking advantage of these business opportunities. So the first step that we are proposing today is for you to participate in a trade mission organized by the Auto Care Association and the U.S. Commercial Service. And this is a business development opportunity supported by the U.S. Embassy to explore this market. Last year, as we mentioned earlier, we hosted 2 trade missions, one to Peru, one to Guatemala. They were very successful, and we want to continue helping companies exploring new markets and increasing their presence in Latin America. So trade mission participants attend market briefings, participate in site visits, and have one-on-one business matchmaking appointments with pre-screened prospective customers and partners. So in conclusion, this program offers an excellent opportunity to enhance your exposure to a local market and get access to key industry contacts. So when are we going to Colombia? So we have confirmed the dates for a trade mission to Colombia, June 7 and 8 of this year. So what are the benefits to participate in this trade mission? What is included? So first, you will get the personalized one-on-one meetings through the U.S. Commercial Service that will meet your specific goals and objectives. In this occasion, you will get also an admission to the Expo Partes show that runs in these same dates. And this show is the largest Colombian automotive parts fair. It is organized by Asopartes. It is a Colombian trade association representing auto parts importers and distributors. And this year, they are expecting around 300 local and international exhibitors, and they are anticipating over 25,000 visitors for this edition. You will also get the U.S. Embassy country briefing. You will get an industry briefing also by Asopartes. In this trade mission, you will get the hotel accommodations, most meals, breakfast, group dinners, lunch, they will be included. Also airport transfers and local ground transportations to all trade mission events. We're going to have also a site visit to a local manufacturer and distributor. And of course, once you register, you will have a conference call with the specialist at the embassy, and you will be able to review, we will be able to review your specific goals and objectives, and of course discuss the potential of your product service in Colombia. Of the one-on-one meetings at Expo Partes, you're going to at the convention center, so that way you're going to be able, after this first session, to explore the show. Then on Thursday, we're going to have a site visit to a local distributor and manufacturer, and then we will have the second session of our one-on-one meetings, also at the show. And then on Friday, companies will be returning to the United States. Okay, so regarding the trade mission costs, here we have the cost for Colombia. If you're a member of the Auto Care Association, you're going to be paying $3,500, and each additional participant will pay $1,000. We also have prices for non-members. We, of course, registration is open for members and non-members. And of course, if you want to have more information or you're interested in becoming a member of the Auto Care Association, please email me and I will send you all the information you need and benefits for the membership. What is not included in the trade mission package? It is not included airfare and non-specified meals and incidentals. So this is very important information for everyone. As we mentioned earlier, we received an award from the Department of Commerce. So for companies that register and that are promoting U.S. Products that are 51% or more U.S. content, you will qualify immediately for a $1,500 upfront offset of the trade mission package. So it means that if you're an Auto Care Association member, you will be investing only $2,000 for the package that I just described. So again, this is a great value for the outcome you will receive with this participating in the trade mission. If you want more information about the content requirements to get these offset in the trade mission package, please email me, and also you can visit our website, and I'll have it just in a second in another slide. Okay, so regarding registration, here is our website. Please register at www.autocare.org/trade-missions. Once we receive your registration, we're going to schedule a conference call with a specialist and you will receive the feedback and notification on your qualification. And of course, you will be receiving the invoice that will include this offset in the final cost. Once we receive your payment, then we're going to start working on your meetings. And please keep in mind that the deadline to register is April 7. So if you're planning to attend, please submit your application as soon as possible, as the spots are limited and we already have companies that register for district mission. Here we have a slide with some testimonials from our past participants. So we mentioned earlier, some of them were able and have reported already successful sales, and some
that dominate the market. Could you repeat that for us?
Sure, Kelly. So Auteco, which is an Indian company, they have several brands that they assemble here in Colombia: Baja, Pulsar, Kinko, Kawasaki, and KTM. Those are like the main brands that they are leading the market with. Yamaha is the second leading brand in the country, and their motorcycle, the brand is Yamaha. Akate Motorcycles is a Chinese company, and the brands are AKT and TBS. Fanalca is the assemblers of Honda motorcycles, so the brand is Honda. Suzuki is the other brand, and Hero Motorcycles, they recently started in Colombia like 3 years ago. It's also an Indian company. So those are like the main brands of motorcycles in the country.
And a question came in about Expo Parte and which city it's going to take place. Maybe you could comment on that, and also the importance of this particular trade show for the Colombia and Latin America aftermarket.
Yeah. So Expo Parte's trade show is the largest trade show of auto parts in Colombia. It takes place in Bogota. This year it will take place in Bogota, but it switched from city between Bogota and Medellin. So this year is in Bogota, and next year it will take place in Medellin. The organizer is Asopartes, which is the largest and most important association of auto parts importers and distributors in the country. The trade show has been happening in Colombia for the past 10 years.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of foresight on the Auto Care Association by timing this mission with that show. So participants will have the chance to visit the show to see what else is in the market, the region, in addition to the targeted, customized, one-on-one schedule with potential partners. So I would encourage anyone on the line that is considering growth in that market. This is really a unique opportunity at a really well-priced price point to grow, expand your contacts, and do business development in the market. One other question came in about the MDCP grant itself and what the requirements are. I'll just direct you to export.gov/MDCP for information, or reach out to me, Kelly Holloway, and I'd be happy to share more about that particular award. There was another question about if there's a need for ambulances and related equipment, as well as training in the market. Is there a need for new ambulances and equipment and related training in the market?
Regarding that question, we can look at the trade data, and maybe you can give us the name of the company or the person that asked that question, and we can get back to them with more information regarding the ambulances and the demand of new ambulances in the country.
Okay, thank you for the question. We're happy to follow up with you about that. Please do send an email. to one of the contacts. And then from Ira, I was asking about the international company profile and what exactly that was and where to find more information on that. Jeff or Norcia?
That was on the international company profile?
Yes, please.
Yes, you can reach out directly to us.
expert.gov/Colombia, and services to U.S. companies. You can also find a brief description of the service, and also in our contact information, you can also reach out directly to us.
Yeah. So it's in short, it's a due diligence report of many pages that is a visit to the prospective target site, reference check, and more. It's widely used by companies, attorneys, and others. Sort of a Dun & Bradstreet type report. A question came in, I think maybe Norcia and Carolina, this would be best for you, about the one-on-one meetings that are taking place as part of the schedule, how you are going to organize, how many you're likely to organize per company, and then I'm sure many have the concern that if you're not able to organize meetings or find targets that are interested, what happens if someone has already registered, a company has already registered?
Norcia, I think maybe you can help us with this question. Thank you.
Yes. We organize in between 7 to 8 meetings. And we might be organizing 3 meetings the first day on June 7th and 4 meetings on June 8th. The meetings will take place in the afternoon, and they will be at the convention center where the Expo Partners trade show will be taking place.
About how many meetings do you think that schedule will allow to happen?
Between 7 to 8 meetings.
Okay. And I understand that as companies register, they pay, you start the service, you start to look for partners. If we find that there is no demand for that particular company's products in the market, and Colombian reps and distributors and whatnot are not interested in meeting, what's that process? How does that feedback to the applicants happen, and can they cancel their registration?
Sure. So once you register, we will receive the form, and we will review the market's potential for your products in the market. Also, we will have a conference call to better understand your products and your goals for the market. And once you agree to participate in the trade mission, and we see we are not receiving enough response or enough interest from the potential distributors, we will let you know in advance. Also, we will be providing a midterm report around mid-May. So through the midterm report, you will see how many interested companies or potential distributors meetings you will have at that moment, and we will also provide a final report 1 week before the trade mission. But anyway, the midterm report will give you a better view of the interest of your products in the market.
What about, there's a question on armored vehicles, demand for that type of feature or types of vehicles in the market. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, certainly I think it's fair to say that the demand for armored vehicles is still there, although it has diminished slightly due, again, to the improved security environment in Colombia now. So there is still a market, but a lot of that is obviously done domestically. And we do know some of the domestic providers of armored services, and that's something that if a company wanted a list of some of the major providers of armored vehicle services, we could provide something like that. There is still a demand coming in from the business community, especially the wealthy here. But again, the need for armored vehicles is going down, which is good news. But we can certainly provide a list of those companies here that do that, and maybe purchasing those supplies from the United States.
Thank you. I know we're closing in on a little longer than we had planned, but some great questions coming in. I think perhaps we have time for one more, and it is if fleet and heavy-duty on-road, off-road equipment segment is going to be included in this scope of the mission. So is that something that we can also support, and you could set meetings up, and would it be relevant to the Expo Partes trade show?
Yes, if they are mainly auto parts for this type of vehicles, it has good opportunities. But if it's actually the heavy-duty vehicle, right now in the country we have some restriction regarding some regulation that's been implemented 3-4 years ago with the scrappage, which in order to sell a new heavy-duty vehicle, the country has to eliminate a used vehicle with more than 20 years in the market in order to be able to license a new vehicle. So the opportunities are very limited. So auto parts for those vehicles, there are better opportunities there.
Well, terrific questions. There's more coming in. I can see we'll have the need to follow up with some of the participants. Again, you're going to get this recording and this slide deck. Carolina Aragosis with the Auto Care Association will follow up with you and to make sure that you have everyone's contact information. And remember our comments that locally you have a U.S. Commercial Service Office with senior trade specialists who are working to help you not only with Colombia and opportunities like this, but worldwide, and to tap into our Jeff Geigers and Norcias in embassies and consulates around the world to find the partners to get the questions answered you need to determine how best to proceed in growing your exports and where to target your efforts. So please, let's keep the dialogue open. I want to, on behalf of the Commerce Department, thank you, participants and our speakers, for being part today, and in particular for the Auto Care Association for all your work on behalf of the aftermarket industry and helping to strengthen that part, that critical part of our economy. With that, we will close. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.